My name is Rowan Price, 27 years old, and the night my sister's perfect life imploded, I was hidden in the shadows like always, one hand on a soundboard and the other wrapped around a secret that could burn our family to the ground. The champagne glass trembles in Jasmine's hand, catching fractured rainbows from the $20,000 crystal chandelier overhead. The jazz quartet has gone silent. 50 of the East Coast's elite, women in Chanel and men in bespoke suits, have stopped mid-conversation, their eyes fixed on the massive projection screen that has just flickered to life behind my sister. She stands on the raised platform in our parents' living room, her gown gleaming like freshly fallen snow, the 5-carat diamond engagement ring catching the light as she gestures toward the dark corner where I'm stationed, at the audio console. "Thank you to my poor sister Rowan," she says, her voice dripping with practiced sympathy, "who always accepts living in the shadows so I can shine." The room erupts in polite laughter, that brittle, expensive kind of sound that never quite reaches anyone's eyes. I see my mother's satisfied smile, the tight little curve of approval she reserves for moments when the family image lands exactly as scripted. My father, Lucas, nods from the front row, jaw clenched with pride like he built this moment brick by brick. But Aidan Caldwell, tech billionaire, my sister's fiancé, the man who was supposed to seal her ascent into the stratosphere of wealth, doesn't laugh. He releases her hand like it's contaminated. He pulls out the tablet controlling the smart home system, his fingers moving across the screen with the precision of a surgeon making an incision. "Interesting," he says, his voice cutting through the laughter like a scalpel through silk. "Let's see what the data says about who really owns this house." The projection screen behind Jasmine shifts. Her engagement photo slideshow vanishes, replaced by something else entirely. That is the moment my sister's life ends, right at her own engagement party. But the fuse for this explosion wasn't lit in the ballroom. It was lit 4 months earlier, not under a chandelier, but in the dark. The road to this destruction was forged in the stifling mechanical heat of the converted storage closet that served as my office. The servers hummed like angry hornets, stacked in metal racks that radiated waves of warmth and made sweat bead at my temples, despite the October chill outside. On my dual monitors, the 3D rendering of the glass house rotated slowly, all clean lines and impossible angles, a cliffside masterpiece designed to make whoever lived there feel like they were floating above the Atlantic. The digital clock in the corner read 11:47 p.m. I had been there since 6 that morning, the same chair, the same humming light, the same dull ache in my spine that never quite went away anymore. On my second monitor, tucked behind layers of legitimate software, a security camera feed I was not supposed to know about showed the main office, the glass-walled, light-flooded space that should have been mine. Jasmine sat there in perfect makeup, scrolling through wedding dress websites, her manicure clicking against her phone screen. Every few minutes, she threw her head back in laughter, probably at some text from one of her society friends. She hadn't opened our design software once that day, or the day before, or, honestly, most days. My phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine popped up on the screen. "Need you to revise the wedding invitation design. Aidan says the current font looks cheap. Fix it by morning." I stared at the message, the casual entitlement of it, the invitation I had designed during my lunch break. The lunch break I never actually took. I zoomed in on the glass railing detail in the blueprint on my screen, the one Aidan had specifically asked about a month before, the one Jasmine waved off as boring technical stuff. I ran the horizontal load calculation for the third time, adjusting the laminate thickness to exceed state building code requirements by 40%, because when you were designing a home for someone else's children to grow up in, you didn't cut corners, even if that someone was marrying your sister, even if she was taking credit for every calculation you made. The closet door opened without warning. My father filled the doorframe, his 6'2" frame blocking out the hallway light. Lucas Price, president of the firm, still wearing his suit at midnight like he was auditioning for a corporate thriller. "Working late?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. "The glass railing calculations," I said, my voice automatically steady, like my worth lived inside those numbers. "Good." He stepped into the cramped space, and suddenly there was no oxygen left. "Caldwell called earlier. He's concerned about the timeline." He said it like the words were a threat, not an update. I reminded him that this firm had never missed a deadline, that I had never missed a deadline. Don't make me a liar, Rowan. His tone sharpened. Between us, even when unspoken, sat the trap agreement like a landmine. Training repayment agreement. $50,000 I allegedly owed the company for professional development if I quit before 5 years were up. 5 years of working in this closet while Jasmine paraded as lead designer. 5 years of earning $35,000 a year while she pulled 120. 3 years and 2 months left on my sentence. I won't let you down, I said. The words came out automatic, conditioned, like a reflex when he walked into the room. You'd better not. Your sister's wedding depends on this project. He adjusted his cufflinks. Cartier, probably worth more than my car. Jasmine is building something bigger than you can understand. The Caldwell connection will transform this firm, transform our family name. Transform Jasmine, I thought. The rest of us were just the scaffolding. He left without closing the door. I listened to his footsteps fade down the hallway, then turned back to my screen. The glass house rotated silently, beautiful and perfect, and completely uncredited. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jasmine. Also need you to call the caterer tomorrow. Aiden wants to add a sushi station. You know what he likes. I did know what he liked, because I was the one who sat through the 3-hour consultation meeting where he explained his vision for the house, talking about wanting floor-to-ceiling windows so his future children could watch the sunrise over the ocean, while Jasmine scrolled through her phone and said, "Yes, honey," at appropriate intervals. I saved my work and pulled up a personal folder hidden 3 subfolders deep, password protected. Inside were 73 completed designs, houses I had created in stolen hours between assigned projects, each one signed in the bottom right corner with my name and title I wasn't technically allowed to use yet. In this folder, I existed. I was about to close it when I noticed the file properties. Total hours logged, 1,847. That was 1,847 hours of my life spent building a career in secret, in a closet, while my sister built her throne in the glass office. The cursor hovered over the delete button. It would have been so easy to erase the evidence of my own ambition. To accept the script, Jasmine the architect, me the ghost in the machine. Instead, I created a new folder, titled it Evidence. I didn't know why yet, just instinct. A small act of rebellion no one could see. The following morning, the conference room smelled like expensive coffee and Jasmine's perfume, sharp and floral and impossible to ignore. Aiden sat at the head of the table in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual salary, his tablet open in front of him. My sister perched beside him in a white power suit, engagement ring prominently displayed every time she gestured. I was tucked in the corner, my name on the meeting agenda listed as technical assistant. My role was simple: take notes, stay silent, provide information only when directly asked. I've been reviewing the structural plans, Aiden said, his finger tracing the glass railing on his tablet screen. This section, the cantilever deck, is this safe for small children? What's the horizontal load resistance required by state building code? Jasmine's smile didn't waver. Oh, honey, don't worry about the boring technical details. It looks romantic, and that's what matters. Trust me, I've spent months perfecting the aesthetic. I'm asking about engineering, Aiden replied, his voice still patient, but with an edge threaded through it. What's the load rating? Jasmine's eyes flickered to me for a fraction of a second, a silent command to fix this without making her look bad. Her mouth kept moving. The glass is very strong, top of the line. Rowan handles all the numbers stuff. Disappointment flashed across Aiden's face, subtle but unmistakable. I had seen that look my whole life, usually aimed at me. It did something strange, seeing it aimed at her instead. I instinctively leaned forward, unable to watch the firm's reputation crumble in slow motion. Actually, the railing uses triple laminated tempered glass rated for 500 pounds per linear foot, which exceeds the state requirement of 200 pounds by crack. Pain exploded in my shin. Lucas's shoe connected under the table with practiced precision, the kind of strike that didn't leave visible bruises but delivered a clear message. Shut up. I choked off the rest of the sentence. What Rowan means, my father said smoothly, his hand settling on my shoulder in a gesture that looked fatherly but felt like a vice, is that all technical specifications have been verified by our engineering consultant. We have full certification documentation available upon request. Aiden's gaze shifted between me and my father, calculation flickering behind his eyes. I'd like to see those certifications. Email them by the end of the day. Of course, Jasmine said brightly, already pivoting. Now, about the master bathroom. I was thinking Calicotta marble. The meeting continued, a blur of fixtures and finishes. I sat in silence, my shin throbbing, typing notes I would later transform into the certifications Aiden requested, certifications Jasmine would send under her name. As we were leaving, Aiden stopped beside my chair. Rowan, right? I nodded, not trusting my voice. You know your building codes, he said casually, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. She's very thorough with the details, Lucas interjected, steering him toward the door like I was some piece of equipment he didn't want examined too closely. That's why we keep her on the technical team. Everyone has their role. Aiden glanced back once before he left. I pretended to be absorbed in my laptop, but my pulse was loud in my ears. That night, back in my closet office, I opened the evidence folder and added a new file. Meeting notes, March 10, 15. XT. I typed. Aiden asked about glass railing specifications. Jasmine couldn't answer. I provided technical data. Lucas kicked me to maintain silence. I stared at the words, the rawness of seeing it written down. I wondered what I was doing, who I was doing it for. Then I saved the file and returned to work on the glass house, making sure every calculation was perfect. Because even if no one ever knew I designed it, I would know. And I refused to let my sister's incompetence be the reason someone's child fell through a defective railing. My phone buzzed. Jasmine again. Wedding emergency. Need you to call 3 florists and get quotes for peonies. Aiden loves peonies. Due tomorrow. I looked at the clock. 1:23 a.m. The absurdity of being handed both the structural integrity of a multi-million-dollar home and the flower shopping list for an 800-guest wedding barely registered anymore. I picked up my phone and started making a list of florists to call in the morning. Because that was what ghosts did. We served. We did not speak. Not yet. Time blurred as the project deadline approached. The calendar on the wall mocked me, counting down the days in red ink. Nights turned into early mornings fueled by instant ramen and caffeine packets. The servers hummed, my monitors glowed, and my world shrank to numbers and lines and the constant ache behind my eyes. 2 nights before the engagement party, the instant ramen cups formed a small graveyard around my keyboard. 4 empty ones lined up like gravestones. My forehead rested against the spacebar, and I was dimly aware that I'd been asleep for maybe 20 minutes when the autosave ping jolted me awake. The clock read 2:17 a.m. My neck screamed in protest as I lifted my head. The door opened. Panic flooded my system. Lucas did random checks sometimes, making sure I wasn't wasting company time. I frantically minimized the wedding planner's spreadsheet I'd been working on, unpaid labor for Jasmine, and pulled up the glass house blueprints. But it wasn't my father's cologne that filled the small space. It was something more expensive, more subtle. Aiden stood in the doorway wearing a worn college hoodie and jeans, holding an insulated high-end delivery bag. For a second, both of us just stared. He looked confused, then surprised, then something else I couldn't quite read. Rowan? He asked, like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. His gaze took in the server racks, the single fluorescent light, the complete absence of windows, the graveyard of noodle cups. Where's Jasmine? My mouth forgot how to form words. A tech billionaire stood in my glorified broom closet at 2 a.m, holding what smelled like sushi from a place I'd only ever seen in magazines. She's not here, I managed. He frowned and held up his phone, showing the smart office app. The system alerted me. Office server activity triggered a notification. I thought... He trailed off as understanding dawned. I thought she was here working on our house. The way he said "our house" hit me in a place I didn't want to examine, like he was already emotionally invested in a building that, for months, had existed only in blueprints and my exhausted brain. He set the delivery bag down on the only clear corner of my desk, right next to my $2 instant ramen cups. "Sushi," he said absently. "And truffle fries. They keep better in the insulated bag." The contrast made my chest tighten. Truffle fries and artisan sushi beside preservative-laden noodles. "Jasmine told me you didn't know how to use our design software," he said slowly, his eyes on my screen. "She said you were just support staff." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Fear had been trained into me over years. Speaking out against the narrative felt like touching a live wire. Aiden stepped closer to the monitor. I resisted the urge to minimize everything. He took in the detailed cross-sections on my screen, the safety adjustments he had requested 3 months prior, the ones Jasmine had called too complicated to implement. He pulled out his phone again, opened something, and muttered, "Edit logs." My heart hammered. "The system tracks every user's time in the software," he said, scrolling. 480 hours logged under your account on this project." He looked up, and there was something dangerous in his expression now. Not anger exactly, something colder, more precise. "Jasmine's account shows 2 hours, both spent renaming files, last active 14 weeks ago." The fluorescent light hummed above us. The servers maintained their angry hornet symphony. I waited for the world to end. Instead, Aiden exhaled slowly, then lowered himself to the floor, crossing his legs like this cramped closet was his meditation room. He opened the delivery bag and pulled out a container of sashimi, then a small carton of fries. "When was the last time you ate something that didn't come out of a microwave?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. He held out the container. "Eat, then tell me what the hell is going on." I should have refused, should have protected the illusion my family had built, but I was so tired, and the tuna belly glistened like jewels, and something in his expression told me he already knew enough that there was no going back. I took the container. The first bite made my eyes sting. "She's at Avalon," I said quietly. "The club downtown. Bottle service with her friends." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "While I thought she was here working on our future home." "She does this a lot," I heard myself say. The words tumbled out like someone else was speaking. "She has me log into her laptop remotely and move the mouse every 20 minutes so the system shows activity. Makes it look like she's working late." Jesus Christ. He scrubbed a hand through his hair. "What else?" Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that, for the first time in years, someone was actually asking. But I told him about the trap agreement, the stolen trust fund that was supposed to be my safety net, the wedding planning I did off the clock, the meeting where Lucas kicked me under the table for speaking up, the 4 years of designing buildings that would have Jasmine's signature in the corner. Aiden listened without interrupting. As I talked, his expression turned progressively more glacial. When I finally ran out of words, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked back at the monitor, at the rotating glass house. "I came here because I thought I was marrying someone dedicated to building beautiful things," he said, voice low. "Someone who understands that architecture is about creating spaces where people build their lives." He tapped the edge of my keyboard lightly. "I thought I was marrying an architect." He didn't look at me when he said the next part. "Jasmine is a fraud." The word landed with the same cold precision as one of his calculations. "And I'm an idiot who was so caught up in the aesthetics that I didn't check the source code." He stood, pulling out his phone again. "I need you to help me run a forensic audit," he said. "Every project file, every financial transaction, every communication log. Can you do that?" Panic flared. "If my father finds out—" "Your father's trap agreement is worth less than the paper it's printed on," Aiden cut in. "My legal team will shred it in about 48 hours. Pro bono." He met my eyes, and there was no pity there, only a fierce, almost unnerving clarity. "I will not marry a fraud, Rowan, and I will not let your family trap you in this closet for another 3 years. Help me compile the evidence, and I'll set you free." Freedom. The word sounded foreign, like a language I hadn't spoken since childhood. What's the catch? I asked. There was always a catch with my family. No catch, he said. Just one condition. I need the absolute truth. Every file, every discrepancy, everything they've stolen from you. Can you do that without your fear getting in the way? I thought about the evidence folder buried in my hard drive, the meeting notes, the work logs, 4 years of documentation I'd been keeping without really knowing why. Maybe I'd been preparing for this moment all along. I can do that, I said. Aiden held out his hand, not for a handshake, but for my phone. Give me your number. We'll coordinate through a secure connection, nothing they can trace. My fingers shook as I handed it over. I watched him type his contact information. When he gave it back, his name was saved under something innocuous, like he'd already thought 3 moves ahead. 48 hours, he said, stepping toward the door. Then we burn it all down. After he left, the closet felt different. The hum of the servers sounded less like a prison and more like a countdown. I sat there for a few seconds, holding a container of $80 sushi in my lap, and allowed myself, just once, to imagine what freedom might actually look like. Then I turned back to my screen, opened the evidence folder, and got to work. The morning after Aiden stepped into my closet office felt strangely quiet, like the world was holding its breath. I woke with the imprint of my keyboard still faintly marked on my cheek and a new, unfamiliar sensation thrumming beneath my ribs, a small pulse of defiance, or maybe hope. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the servers were already humming when I logged in, opening the secure connection Aiden had set up. His message appeared instantly. Phase 1. Confirm contract violations and financial anomalies. Ready when you are. Ready. The word felt heavy on my tongue, like a promise I wasn't sure I was allowed to make, but I typed it back anyway. The audit began quietly, methodically, at first. Rows of numbers, timestamps, file logs, authorization signatures. None of it was dramatic on its own, but the pattern was unmistakable. Falsified invoices, double-billed materials, vendor discrepancies that could sink a small firm. I clicked through the first set of flagged transactions, my pulse quickening. Cross-checking budgets with vendor databases wasn't glamorous, but it was truth, cold, undeniable truth. 14 clear violations, Aiden said through the headset, his voice low and steady. The trap agreement alone could get your father fined into oblivion. It's unenforceable. My breath caught. For the first time in years, the invisible chains around my wrists loosened a fraction. 14? I whispered. At minimum, he replied. Your parents built their empire on sand. For a moment, grief and anger twisted together in my chest. All the late nights, all the sacrifices, all the work done in silence so they could shine under the spotlight. But the grief didn't last long, not with proof staring back at me in black and white. We continued for hours, our voices low so no one wandering into the office hallway would hear. Every so often, Aiden would mutter something under his breath. Disbelief, disgust, calculations about legal repercussions. I focused on patterns, dates, amounts, correlating charges. It didn't take long to realize the glass house budget had been treated like an unlimited personal bank account. This one, I murmured, highlighting a line item, lighting fixtures, supposedly custom Italian pendants, but the vendor invoice shows something else. There was a pause as Aiden accessed the same file. A spa package, he said, at the Four Seasons. 3 of them, I added, for my mother and sister. There was no triumph in uncovering it, only clarity. By noon, the script had processed the raw data and spit out pages of red flags. It felt like watching a dam crack, slow at first, then unstoppable. My phone buzzed. Mother. Her name alone drained the warmth from my hands. She didn't wait for me to answer before flinging open the door to my tiny bedroom, her robe swirling like she expected applause for the entrance. She looked me over with a sharpness that felt like a blade. What is that? She demanded, pointing to the navy blue dress hanging from my closet door. It's for the engagement party, I said carefully. I thought maybe... You thought? She snatched the dress with a motion so fast it barely registered before it was in her hands. You thought wrong. Mom? She balled it up, stuffed it into my wastebasket like trash. Are you trying to embarrass Jasmine? Trying to make people look at you instead of her? It's navy, I said, my voice small. It's not even close to... Don't argue with me. She thrust something black and shapeless at me, a garment so devoid of form it barely qualified as clothing. Wear this. You're working the tech booth. You stay out of sight. A familiar ache formed behind my ribs. The ache of being reminded exactly where my place was. Yes, ma'am, I whispered. Her face softened only slightly, in a way that always felt performative rather than real. Good girl. Remember, family comes first. Jasmine's future comes first. Don't forget that. When she left, I didn't cry. Not this time. Not anymore. Instead, I retrieved the dress from the trash, carefully smoothing the wrinkles and hanging it in the back of my closet, not to wear, but to remember. A reminder that wanting something better wasn't selfish. It was human. My phone buzzed again. Not my mother this time. Aiden. Phase 1 complete. Legal confirmed. Trap agreement void. Ready for Phase 2? I stared at the message, my fingers trembling. Ready, I typed. That afternoon, the VPN connection flickered online at 4:47 p.m. Jasmine was at the spa, posting photos of champagne and face masks, oblivious. My parents were at the estate, overseeing floral arrangements. I was alone in the office, surrounded by logged data, documents, and the hum of truth clicking into place. Running cross-reference script now, Aiden said. This will show us every inflated vendor charge and every misappropriation. Hold tight. The lines of code raced across my screen. One by one, red indicators lit up like a firestorm. I zoomed in on the first cluster. Here, Italian tile. Charge $15,000. But vendor records show... Hermes bags, I finished. He let out a breath that sounded a lot like disbelief. There's more. Look at the lighting fixtures. I clicked. Monaco. $35,000. A bachelorette weekend. It didn't stop there. Client deposits funneled to private accounts. Materials quoted at triple cost. Luxury items marked as site necessities. Dozens of small thefts stitched together into a tapestry of calculated greed. Aiden was silent for a long moment. She's not just neglectful, he said finally. She's committing outright fraud. My throat tightened. They'll destroy me when this comes out. They'll try, he said, but they'll fail. What about the fallout? I whispered. The family. The business. He sighed, but it wasn't dismissive. More like someone bracing to deliver truth that could bruise. Rowan, they used you. For years. They treated your life like a resource to extract. This isn't betrayal, it's survival. I swallowed hard. When everything comes out tomorrow night, they'll call me ungrateful. Disloyal. They will, he said softly. Are you ready for that? I looked at the glass house rotating on my second monitor, the same building my sister claimed credit for, a building my hands and brain had shaped over thousands of hours. I am now, I said. We worked into the evening, compiling everything into an airtight presentation. Clean, chronological, irrefutable. Every slide was a scalpel, every detail a blade. By 11 p.m., the outline was complete. Tomorrow, Aiden said, I need you to do exactly 3 things. Set up the presentation and keep it hidden. Keep the intercom on so we have audio. And when it's done, walk out. Don't look back. 3 things, I echoed. Rowan, he added quietly. After tomorrow, your life changes. Completely. Silence stretched between us. Not the suffocating kind I'd learned to live in, but a different kind. Open, uncertain, full of terrifying possibility. I'm ready, I said. He exhaled, the sound edged with something like relief. Good. Then let's finish what they started. The night before the engagement party, I stayed in the office long after the screens dimmed, staring at the final slide. The truth about everything. My work, their theft, the lies they built an empire on. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what the truth would cost. I was afraid of what staying silent would. 30 minutes before the first guest arrived, the engagement party looked like a magazine spread someone had willed into existence with enough money and pressure. The estate was unrecognizable, every surface transformed. White roses spilled over from crystal vases, $12,000 worth of petals and thorns. The $20,000 chandelier in the foyer scattered light across marble floors like shattered diamonds. Staff in black moved silently through the space, adjusting place settings and polishing glassware that cost more than my rent. I moved through it all in my assigned black uniform, a walking shadow with a staff badge clipped where my name should have been. My place was not in the photographs, not on the guest list. My place was in the dark booth at the back of the ballroom, surrounded by cables and screens. I ran a final systems check with the same meticulousness I brought to my structural calculations. Microphones, live. Projection system, online. Primary presentation file, loaded but hidden behind a decoy slideshow of engagement photos. Intercom, enabled. Recording indicator blinking a faint red I doubted anyone but me would notice. The laptop hummed softly, the cursor blinking over the file name that could end my family's career in one keystroke. Through the booth's tinted window, I watched Jasmine float through the hall, trailing laughter and perfume. Her custom gown hugged her like it had been grown on her body, all white silk and careful draping, the exact kind of dress our mother used to circle in magazines when she thought no one was looking. The 5-carat ring caught the chandelier light with every throw of her hand, each sparkle a reminder of the future she believed she had locked in. Guests drifted toward her like planets around a sun, heads tilting with admiration, envy, calculation. Every time someone said, "Congratulations," I could almost hear my parents inhaling that validation like oxygen. The door to the tech booth slammed open so hard my headphones jumped on the hook. Jasmine stalked in, rage pinched around her mouth, the polite social mask stripped away, now that she thought no one important could see. "There's feedback on the main microphone," she snapped. "Fix it." I clicked a few controls I'd already adjusted 10 minutes before, more for show than necessity. "I'm working on it," I said. "Work faster." She folded her arms, leaning one hip against the console like she owned even the shadows in this room. "Honestly, Rowan, this is basic. You're lucky we let you be useful at all." I bit back the instinctive apology and instead focused on the slider in front of me until the sound cleared. "It's fixed," I said. "Good." She checked her reflection in the dark monitor, smoothing an invisible wrinkle in her gown. Then her expression shifted, her irritation cooling into something colder. "Oh, and since you're hiding back here anyway, I wanted to tell you something." The way she said it made my skin prickle. I turned slightly in my chair. "What?" She smiled, slow and deliberate, like someone savoring a private joke before sharing it. "After tonight, once I'm officially tied to Aiden and this whole Caldwell thing goes through, I'm firing you." My fingers tightened around the edge of the console. "You're... what?" "Don't look so shocked," she said lightly. "You didn't think Daddy and I were going to keep paying you to hide in this closet forever, did you? But don't worry, I'm not cruel." She toyed with her ring, letting it catch the light. "I'm keeping your contract. Daddy's transferring it to me as a wedding present. So you'll still owe the money. You'll just be working it off directly for me." The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thick. "Working it off how?" I asked, even though my stomach already knew. "As my personal assistant," she said, like it should have been obvious. "Picking up my dry cleaning, scheduling my spa days, managing my social calendar, making sure my coffee is the right temperature, my shoes are pulled for events, all the things you're actually qualified for." She stepped closer, lowering her voice until it was just for me and the equipment. "You'll spend the rest of your life in my shadow, Rowan, where you belong. And if you ever try to speak up, ever try to claim credit for anything I've built, I'll destroy you. I'll call you ungrateful and unstable and jealous. I'll tell everyone you tried to sabotage me because you're bitter and lonely and no one wanted you. And they'll believe me because I'm the one they can see." She was close enough now that I could smell the imported perfume at her throat, the same scent my mother had told me was too sophisticated for me when I once asked what it was. "You're nothing," she whispered, eyes bright with mean satisfaction. "You have always been nothing. And nothing is all you will ever be." She didn't know 3 things. She didn't know the intercom system was live, transmitting every word into the main soundboard and quietly recording it to a secure file. She didn't know Aiden was waiting in the VIP lounge with an earpiece tucked discreetly in his ear, listening. And she didn't know that whatever part of me had been afraid to go against her had died about 48 hours earlier in a closet that looked a lot like this one. I turned back to the monitor, my hands calm even as my heart thudded. "Happy engagement, Jasmine," I said evenly. "I hope you like my gift." Confusion flickered across her face, the first crack in her composure. "What gift?" "You'll see," I said. She studied me for another beat, then scoffed and pushed off the console, spine straightening as she slipped her mask back on. By the time she stepped out of the booth and into the ballroom light, she was once again the glowing bride-to-be everyone came to celebrate. Through the glass, I watched her rejoin Aiden near the platform. From this angle, I could see details most guests wouldn't notice. The way his shoulders stayed bare inches away from hers instead of leaning in. The way he didn't quite reach for her hand when she offered it. His face had the flat, polite neutrality of someone who had already made a decision and was waiting to execute it. My phone buzzed against my thigh. A message from him appeared on the screen. Heard everything. Intercom recording clean. She's done. Stand by for signal. I slipped my headphones on, fingers hovering over the keyboard, and waited. The jazz quartet eased into a soft instrumental as people were called into the main room. The lights dimmed slightly, the chandelier shifting from bright clarity to warm, flattering glow. Guests gathered with champagne flutes in hand, drifting into a semicircle facing the raised platform where Jasmine and Aiden stood side by side. My parents took their place in the front, their faces lit with the kind of pride they never turned on me. My mother dabbed at the corner of her eyes as if overcome with emotion. My father stood tall, one hand in his pocket, the other resting on the back of a chair, like he owned not just the house, but the narrative of everyone inside it. I ran one last internal check. Presentation file ready. Audio levels set. Recording stable. The cursor blinked over the command window that would switch the feed from Jasmine's carefully curated slideshow to the truth. On the platform, Jasmine lifted her champagne glass. The room quieted in that charged way that means everyone expects something worth remembering. The chandelier's light formed a soft halo around her head, making the image perfect. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, voice clear and confident. "This has been such an incredible journey, and I'm so grateful to share this moment with the people who've supported me." She paused, turning deliberately toward my dark corner. "Especially my sister Rowan, who's always accepted her place in the shadows so I can shine. It takes a special kind of person to be satisfied with so little, to never want more than what they're given. Thank you, Rowan, for being that person." The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was condescending and amused and utterly predictable. My mother pressed her hand to her chest like she'd just heard something deeply moving. My father's lips curved in approval. From the booth, the scene looked like a tableau carved in glass. Then Aiden moved. He released Jasmine's hand. She almost stumbled from the sudden absence of support, fingers catching air where his grip had been. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the tablet that controlled the smart system, his face utterly unreadable. When he spoke, his voice threaded easily through the room, amplified by the mic, cutting clean through the last echoes of laughter. "Interesting," he said. "Let's see what the data says about who really deserves to shine." He looked straight toward the tech booth, eyes finding mine through the tinted glass. It was the signal. I pressed enter. On my monitor, the feed flickered once. The massive projection screen behind Jasmine mirrored the change a heartbeat later. Her slideshow, engagement photos on a beach, professionally lit shots of them in the half-built glass house, posed candids in designer clothes, vanished. In its place, stark white text on a black background appeared. Slide 1. Work logs. The Glasshouse Project. Underneath, 2 columns. My account. 480 logged hours. Hers. 2. Last active, 14 weeks ago. Activity description. File renaming only. A murmur rippled through the crowd, confused at first, then sharper. Jasmine turned slowly, confusion knitting her forehead. "That's just technical back-end stuff," she said into the mic, laugh brittle. "Rowan handles the boring computer work while I focus on the actual design." "I'm asking everyone here to focus on the facts for a moment," Aiden said, advancing the slide with a tap of his finger. "Let's review some of those facts together." The next slide appeared. Screenshots of message threads. Names, dates, words. The text between Jasmine and an old boyfriend filled the screen, blown up for everyone to read. Her calling Aiden boring but loaded. Her promising to shop until she dropped with his money once they were married. Her describing me as her personal slave, bragging about how she'd keep me working like a dog so she could relax. Gasps cut through the room. Not the polite kind this time, the kind that sound like something breaking. "That's fake," Jasmine said quickly, voice rising. "Someone doctored those. I would never—" "The messages were pulled directly from your backed-up account," Aiden said flatly. "Time-stamped, Verified. He tapped again. Slide 3. Financial records. The glass house construction budget beside a list of actual charges. Italian tile, $15,000. Actual vendor invoice, standard tile for a fraction of the price. Difference, luxury handbags from a flagship store. Custom lighting fixtures, $35,000. Actual, a bachelorette trip overseas, first-class flights, and 5-star hotels. Spa packages, jewelry, designer clothing. The total misappropriated amount flashed at the bottom of the screen, $200,000. The champagne glass slipped from Jasmine's hand and exploded against the marble, shards scattering across the floor like the future she thought she'd bought. The sound of it cracked something in the room. My father lurched forward. Those were legitimate business expenses, he insisted, voice too loud, too fast. All of those charges were approved. By you, Aiden said, moving to the next slide. A gallery of scanned invoices appeared, each one bearing my father's signature. Which makes you complicit in fraud. He lifted his phone for the room to see. And I've already sent the complete file to federal investigators. They seem very interested in your creative accounting. My mother's hand clamped around my father's arm. Her face had drained of color beneath her makeup. Guests shifted, some pulling out their own phones, others staring like they'd stumbled into the climax of a show they hadn't realized they were in. The last slide wasn't numbers. It was audio. The room filled with Jasmine's own voice through the speakers, recorded clearly from the tech booth just an hour earlier. Her threats, her description of me as nothing, her plan to use my contract as a leash. Every word she thought would stay in the dark, now echoing in a room full of witnesses. By the time the clip ended, the image of her had shattered more completely than the fallen glass. The room fell into a stunned silence. Aiden reached up, unclipped the white rose boutonniere from his lapel, and dropped it onto the floor between them. Under state law, he said calmly, this ring is considered a conditional gift. Since the marriage will not occur due to your misconduct, you're required to return it. Immediately. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears, the real kind this time, messy and unplanned. Aiden, please, she choked. You can't do this. We can fix it. I can explain. You can explain to your lawyer, he said, turning away from her. He switched the mic off, then turned it back on, facing the guests. As of this moment, our engagement is terminated. Our contracts with this firm are likewise terminated, and we will be pursuing full damages. My father surged forward, words spilling out, threats, denials, wild promises to fix everything. None of it mattered. Not anymore. Then Aiden looked toward the booth again. Rowan Price, he said clearly, using my full name so there could be no mistake. As of 6 p.m. today, I purchased your training repayment agreement from your father for $1. Effective immediately. That contract is void. You owe them nothing. The room tilted. For a second, I thought I might be sick. My hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from the sudden, dizzying sensation of slack where chains had always been. He wasn't finished. In addition, I've transferred back pay to your personal account for your work on the glass house. 480 hours at the going rate for independent architectural consulting. You'll find the deposit already cleared. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know the notification would show a number I had never seen next to my name. Murmurs swelled, turning the air thick. My mother spun toward the booth, eyes blazing. You will not walk out on us, she hissed across the room. Family comes first. You owe us your loyalty. For the first time in my life, I stepped out of the booth and into the light of the ballroom. Heads turned. People who'd never noticed me as anything more than staff stared. My heart pounded, but my voice, when it came, was steady. I owe you nothing, I said. You stole my trust fund. You trapped me in a contract you knew was illegal. You erased my work and put someone else's name on it. That's not family. That's exploitation. My father's face darkened. If you walk out that door, you're dead to us. You'll have nothing, no one. You're throwing away your family for a job and a payout. No, I said quietly. I'm walking toward a life you never intended to let me have. Jasmine stumbled off the platform, mascara streaking down her face, the picture-perfect bride undone. She dropped to her knees in front of me, the 5-carat ring still glittering on her finger. "Rowan, please," she sobbed, hands clasped. "We're sisters. I'm sorry, okay? Don't do this. Don't destroy everything we've built." "Everything I built," I corrected. "Which you stole." For a second, something flickered in her eyes, regret, maybe, or the realization that there were no more angles left to play. I stepped past her. The front door felt farther away than I remembered, each footstep echoing against marble and crystal. Behind me, I could hear my mother crying, my father shouting, my sister calling me ungrateful, dramatic, insane. Guests whispered in low, shocked voices, already turning the night into a story they'd tell for years. I reached for the door handle. The October air hit my face sharp and cold when I opened it, slicing through the heat and noise of the house. For a moment, I just stood there on the threshold listening. Their voices were a storm behind me, but with every step I took down the front steps and onto the driveway, they grew fainter. By the time I reached my car parked near the edge of the property, the estate was just a glow of light in my rear view mirror, and their outrage was nothing more than a distant, muffled roar. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and the sudden silence was so complete it rang in my ears. My phone buzzed again. One new message. "You did it. Go home. Tomorrow, we start building something that belongs to you." I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for years, and then turned the key. For the first time in my life, I drove away without wondering if I was allowed to. 18 months later, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Vermont studio, warming the polished concrete floors and throwing soft golden rectangles across the drafting table. Mornings here didn't hum with server noise or buzz with Jasmine's constant texts. They breathed. The air carried the faint scent of pine drifting in from the woods behind the property, and the only sounds were the low whir of my espresso machine and the rustle of paper as I sorted through client sketches. My firm's name was etched on the glass door in clean, modern lettering, simple, intentional. The opposite of everything I grew up around. I ran my thumb over the edge of a blueprint, appreciating the quiet extravagance of having space, actual physical space, to think, to create, to breathe. This studio wasn't just a building. It was the first structure I'd ever designed solely for myself. Every window placement, every line of sight, every beam of natural light was deliberate, a reclamation of all the hours I had once spent hidden in a closet. "Boss," Claire's voice carried softly from the hall. She poked her head into my office, her ponytail loose and a pencil tucked behind one ear. "The Hartford couple is here for the final walkthrough meeting. Should I bring them into the conference room?" "Yeah, give me 1 minute," I said, gathering my sketches and material samples. Claire nodded, her eyes bright with the enthusiastic energy of someone who still believed the world would make space for her. She reminded me of myself before I learned otherwise, before I learned that talent wasn't always enough. After she disappeared down the hall, my phone buzzed. The caller ID was unmistakable. Caldwell Group. Video call. I smiled as I swiped to accept. Aiden's face came into focus. Older, slightly, maybe a little more tired, but softer around the edges than when we last saw each other in person. His office behind him was all steel and glass, a sharp contrast to the warm wood of mine. "Morning," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Tell me you're free. I have a pitch." "I'm always afraid when you say that," I replied, setting down my coffee. He grinned. "Good. You should be. This one's a challenge. Children's Hospital. We want something bright, hopeful, not clinical. Something that makes kids feel like the building is on their side." My heartbeat kicked up the way it always did when project ideas came into view. "Send me the brief," I said. "I'll sketch some concept drafts by next week." He nodded. "Done. And Rowan?" "Yeah? I'm glad you're the one building this next project." We didn't need to talk about the glass house anymore. It was finished. Completed with my name on every blueprint, my signature on every structural document. It had won 3 design awards, gone viral in architectural circles, and served as the foundation for everything I'd built afterward. The irony was that the glass structure, once a symbol of my invisibility, had become the proof of my existence. After we ended the call, I walked to the wide windows overlooking the rolling hills dusted with early snow. Vermont had become a sanctuary, a place where silence didn't mean suppression, but peace. I took a slow sip of my coffee and let the moment settle into me. My phone buzzed again, a news alert. Price & Co. declares bankruptcy after federal investigation. I didn't click the article. I already knew the story well enough. The investigation that followed that engagement night unearthed years of fraud. Not just Jasmine's, not just my father's, but systemic patterns they'd built an entire reputation on. Clients sued, licenses were suspended, debts mounted. My parents lost the estate not long after, foreclosure papers stapled to the front door of the home they once valued more than me. Last I heard, they lived in a modest apartment on the outskirts of a city they used to mock. My father refused to answer interview requests. My mother, someone told me, worked part-time for a boutique she once claimed was beneath her. And Jasmine, hers was the headline that circulated the longest. From society pages to scandal blogs, her name trended for weeks. The ring returned. Engagement destroyed. Fraud exposed. She was working retail in a mall in New Jersey now, according to a mutual acquaintance. Folding clothes, smiling at customers who didn't know her name or care about her past wins or losses. For a moment, I let the weight of it all settle, but there was no triumph in it, no thrill, just a quiet acknowledgement that choices have consequences. I didn't hate them. I didn't wish for their suffering. I just no longer carried it. I closed the alert without saving it. Claire reappeared in the doorway, holding the client portfolio. Ready? I turned from the window. Yeah, let's do it. I walked behind her and into the conference room, my conference room, where my clients waited, excited and hopeful. They wanted a custom home, something modest but meaningful, something built with intention rather than image. These clients cried when they saw renderings. They hugged me. They saved for years. Their projects mattered. In a way luxury budgets never had. They were building futures, not monuments. As I stepped into the room, a flash of color in the glass caught my eye. A reflection. My reflection. I was wearing the navy blue dress, the same one my mother had thrown in the trash 18 months ago, the same dress I had smoothed out and hidden in my closet as a reminder of everything I wanted but wasn't allowed to have. Back then, it symbolized rebellion. Now, it was something else entirely. Proof, not of who I used to be, but of who I had become. I straightened the sketches under my arm and smiled at my clients. Thank you for waiting, I said, sliding into my seat. Let's build your home. The woman in the navy dress wasn't the ghost in a closet anymore. She was the architect of her own life, and she was just getting started.